Welcome to GlowJob, the beauty podcast that's more than skin deep. We call it a job because real beauty takes work. How was your weekend? My weekend was fun. I went to a bat mitzvah.
Fun.
Yeah, and I haven't been to a bat mitzvah since I was 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Are we old?
I don't know, but this is like for me one of the first like friends' kids bat mitzvahs I've been to, and it was really. I mean, the ceremony was lovely, and it's I think it's such a wonderful coming of age sort of experience, learning to be from being an individual to like being accountable to a greater community. I think it's like a great lesson for a preteen to learn, right?
Yeah.
And then the party was at Lavo.
No way.
I know.
Like Lavo.
Yeah, like
okay.
WeHo Lavo.
Okay, like we party at Lavo.
Yes, like day brunch. It brought me back because at one point they were playing that Rihanna song, We Found Love, the Hope.
A classic,
yeah,
of course.
The Calvin Harris one, yeah. And it literally transported me to being 18 in Lavo on a Saturday in Midtown Manhattan. And it was very trippy.
That's literally deja vu.
Yeah, very deja vu.
That is so funny.
Except I was surrounded by 13-year-old girls.
Was there any like good merch? Because I know these bat mitzvahs in LA go crazy.
Yeah. There were these really cute slippers, and then they had like personalized, or like the pajamas had like the girls' like initials. Yeah, it was cute. It was really cute.
I love that. So growing up in LA, I don't know if you know this, but I was one of those like really kind of spunky, outgoing children, and I was so jealous of all the girls my year that were having their bat mitzvahs in like 7th grade. So I convinced my Korean American parents to throw me a faux mitzvah.
A faux mitzvah.
Yeah.
Wait, that's so cute.
I don't know who I was back then, but I guess I'm still that girl. But anyways, we had it at the Sagebrush Cantina in Calabasas.
Oh my God.
And the theme was neon. I mean, obviously there was no like religious component to it. It was really just a party. But yeah, I like straight up convinced my parents to throw this like little Asian girl her own faux mitzvah. But yeah.
I have so many questions. What date did you pick? Was it your birthday?
It was my birthday.
Oh, okay.
That year. So it was just like a 13th birthday party. Yeah. It was fun. But I'm sure the parents that attended definitely got a kick out of it. Like, who's this little Korean girl throwing herself a faux mitzvah?
I love that. You know what? That's why we're friends. I like eccentricity. It's great. So today we are going to talk about a really fun topic. We're going to do a deep dive into Estee Lauder.
I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So what does it take to build a global beauty empire? And what happens when the cracks begin to show?
And Estee Lauder has been one of those brands that's been around forever. So from those bougie department stores to your grandma's vanity, it was literally the biggest name in beauty at one point. But, let's dive in today about how it's still holding up in today's modern era.
So in today's episode, we're going to do a little bit of background on Estee herself, her scrappy beginnings, and her visionary strategies.
We'll go into her family dynamics. It is a family company. So the first generation with Estee herself, second generation with her son Leonard, and then the third generation, which brings us to today with people like Jane Lauder or her granddaughter.
And then we'll talk a little bit about the challenges that Estee Lauder's had in staying relevant in today's age with, outsized competition, Gen Z markets, and the shifting consumer trends.
And to really just kind of set the stage as we kick things off for how big Estee Lauder is, it's really wild. So it's not just one company. They own 25 different brands underneath their portfolio. They're sold in 150 countries, and they have annual revenues of over $15 billion.
And they employ over 62,000 people worldwide,
which is absolutely crazy if you think about it. There are towns in the United States that have way fewer than 60,000 people.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. So let's talk about Estee herself. She was actually born Josephine Esther Menser in Queens, New York in 1906 to Hungarian immigrant parents.
And I hear that Esther kind of turned into Estee, which was like a nickname, hence the beginning of the brand. But from what we learned, she was fascinated by beauty from a really early age. Her uncle was actually a cosmetic chemist of sorts, kind of creating cream. So she just grew up around beauty and kind of sparked her education in the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I remember reading that article in the Wall Street Journal with her son. And he said that her uncle would make things in their kitchen.
Yes, I love that. Well, I guess back in the day, I mean, there are very few beauty brands that can get away with like making things in the kitchen and selling them.
Yeah.
But I guess that's how you really started if you didn't have the investment, right?
Yeah, totally. And so, Estee or Josephine, she later met Joseph Lauder, her soon to be husband, in the 1920s. They married in 1930, and then they moved from Queens to Manhattan. The couple adopted their surname Lauder after correcting a misspelling of Joseph's dad's names in the immigration records in Ellis Island. So they misspelled it to Lauter and changed it back to Lauder.
I love that they corrected the spelling because you hear so many stories of immigrants coming to the US and the immigration office is just really like messing up the names, right? Like there's so many, good for them though, right?
Yeah, good for them.
So that's a little bit about her background, but let's talk about when she was first starting off the company. It was actually really inspiring because she was just truly a self-made woman. Just like her uncle, she started making these creams in her own kitchen and then selling them door to door, really just doing everything she could to get her name out there. And she was really well known, I think, for her charm with her clients, which I absolutely love. Just kind of talking to people and getting them to try her products.
I mean, more power to her. She's a true saleswoman and she was connecting with people one-on-one. And then, she was actually also an esthetician, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah. So she would give facials to clients in hotel rooms. So she would, book a hotel room and have clients come in throughout the day. And she would also go to beauty salons too. So she was really, really creative in terms of finding her clientele.
I think that's so funny. One of the stories I read about her is that she would find women kind of that were locked underneath those hair dryers, getting their perms or whatever. So they're kind of like forced to be in this stationary position. And she would just come up to them and charm them and be like, hey, try my product.
Yeah.
So smart.
Captive audience.
Exactly.
So Estee and her husband Joseph officially launched Estee Lauder companies in 1946.
And it's so fascinating how quickly this brand kind of grew, because obviously she was like hustling on the ground, but they got their very first kind of department store contract within the first year. The first purchase order to Saks Fifth Avenue for $800, which doesn't seem like a lot right now, but that actually translates to about $14,000 in today's day and age.
That's pretty impressive.
I'd take it for sure.
Oh my God, same. And they initially focused only on 4 products. So they had a cleansing oil, a skin lotion, the super rich all-purpose cream, and then a cream pack, which was a face mask.
Great. So it was kind of like basically a little routine, right? Like a nighttime routine or something like that.
Just a day routine.
Anytime routine.
Yep.
Got it. So there were so many parts about Estee Lauder that not just the products themselves, but kind of what they were bringing to the market that really made them so innovative. I think one thing that Estee was really good at herself was just understanding kind of human psychology, understanding the buyer, what they want. And one of the things that she really introduced to the beauty community as a whole was the power of a free sample.
Ooh.
Right? Like it's so crazy because I feel like sampling is such like an integral part to any brand, like free gifts with, your order. Like you go to Sephora, you can literally try anything in this store and you get free samples with your purchase. But I guess nobody was doing that until she came. So just imagine blind buying skincare and beauty products. Like that's just so wild.
It's crazy. She really revolutionized the buying industry.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, she was famously quoted for saying, never underestimate the power of a free sample.
Such a good idea. I mean, I guess maybe Costco took a page out of her book for that one.
Yeah. And so on that same vein, she also encouraged customers to share their experiences with friends. So she turned word of mouth into a major part of her strategy.
So does that mean like all the women back then before were just kind of like gatekeeping their routines?
Yeah. I mean, and also just think about it like in terms of sharing information, besides seeing an advertisement, perhaps on the radio or on TV, how else were you going to hear about products, right?
Yeah, that's so true. So I guess she was just kind of like turning all of her followers or, clients into influencers, like real life influencers.
Yeah, micro influencers.
Amazing. And other things that I know that she was known for was just kind of how people thought about fragrance purchases. Because I know Estee Lauder, like a lot of people think of it as like the skincare, but fragrance is a huge part of their gameplay and their whole strategy. And prior to kind of Estee revolutionizing things, fragrances for women were really only bought by men as gifts for their wives. So what she came out with was this brand new product called the Youth Dew Bath bath oil. And it was a way for women to experience fragrance and buy it for themselves and use it at home in the bath. So I just love how she's just like teaching people how to use different types of products in a new way, introducing new products into their routine.
Yeah. So she's slowly having, her clients and consumers adapt to a new model, which is so crazy.
It is. And I think, just a side note, like having people actually change the way they do their skincare is wild. Like I know there was this huge craze of like K-beauty and having people all of a sudden do like 12, 15, whatever step routines, but it was definitely a hurdle getting people to there. I think like just now people are really understanding how much of a difference things like toners can make, for example, So she was doing that way back when, introducing like new products and new steps into your routine.
And so Estee's vision for her company has always been about family. I think that's something we should highlight first and foremost. So she actually had two sons. She had Leonard and Ronald. And Leonard, who was the older son, was brought into the business from a really early age.
That's right. Leonard is quoted everywhere, just kind of talking about all these core childhood memories with him and his mom. So like when you mentioned him going to the hotel rooms, like, to do her facials, he would go there too. Right. And even when they were first incorporating the business and doing all of those business meetings with the lawyers, like they brought him in as a little kid to kind of like watch his parents sign these documents, like really becoming a company from the get-go.
And so Leonard officially joined the company full-time in 1958. So when he was 25 years old. And, he became really instrumental in terms of steering strategic growth for the company. He really helped to innovate and expand their operations. So during this time, we like to call this sort of like the Leonard era. The company began to really diversify their offerings. They focused a lot on developing in-house brands, and they also began acquiring a lot of established brands to expand their portfolio.
That's right. And in 1968, they launched their first in-house brand, which was Clinique, which is so wild to think about because that's just like a household name at this point. But for the first time, it was a dermatologist tested, created, allergy safe, fragrance free cosmetic brand, kind of really leading the forefront into like a science first skincare line. And so this project, Clinique, was really spearheaded by his wife, Evelyn, as well as a leading dermatologist at the time, Norman Orentreich. And immediately Clinique became an instant success, and it really started solidifying Estee Lauder's reputation in the beauty space.
And then in 1982, Estee Lauder launched the first ever night serum product. It was the Advanced Night Repair Synchronized Multi-Recovery Complex. Oh my God, that is a mouthful. But you know what? They have said that they sell 22 bottles of this product every minute.
That is so crazy. And I have seen this product on so many vanities. I've owned it myself. Have you?
Same. Yeah.
So the growth and innovation really didn't stop there under Leonard's leadership. In the 1990s, it really began to aggressively just acquire all of these different kind of brands, not just in skincare, but also in the beauty and fragrance space, really just kind of diversifying Estee Lauder's portfolio.
Leonard is also responsible for taking Estee Lauder public. They IPO'd on November 17th of 1995, and the market value of that IPO was about $365 million at the time.
That is nothing to shake your head at, like even by today's standards.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure if you adjusted that for inflation, it'd be astronomical because that's 95. Gosh, that's like, oh my God, is that 30 years ago?
That is crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, despite going public, I think, again, when you first mentioned that they really are a family brand, that is something that they really made sure to be cognizant of as they went public. So even though it's now a publicly traded company, they made sure that, the family itself retained a lot of leadership positions, right?
Yeah. Not only that, they also made sure that they retained control of the company by using something called super voting shares. And now, basically what that means is this is a special class of stock that gives holders more voting power than a regular share. So basically one super voting share has multiple votes versus, just a single common stock share. And so this means that even if the family were to own a relatively small quantity or small number of shares, they still can control significant decision-making power over the board.
Right. So they're still calling all the shots.
Yep, exactly. So to put this all into context, the Lauder family still owns 35% of the overall company. But even though it's a minority stake, they still have 80% of decision-making power.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's all thanks to these super voting shares.
So really in the 90s, Estee Lauder is like top of their game, and they went through a crazy amount of acquisitions at the time, starting off with the acquisition of MAC.
Ooh.
I know, which is
Yeah.
crazy to me. I never really think that they're like kind of one and the same, because MAC does have its own distinct brand, and they're a Canadian company really just focusing on makeup and cosmetics. That's literally what it stands for. But this was them really tapping into the professional makeup artist community, and it really kind of brought this like new edginess to the company, because MAC just had all this like black, sexy packaging, and they still do today.
And then in 1995, they purchased Bobbi Brown Cosmetics. So this was aligning them with that minimalist beauty trend that was really popular in the 90s. And it focused more on that natural, like easy to use makeup look.
Right. So I think it really balanced out the purchase that they made of MAC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of go for like the hardcore beauty girls, and then the everyday. I don't know if it was like clean beauty, but
kind of like the foray into that,
right? The OG clean beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1997, Estee Lauder made probably the smartest investment to date, but it is the acquisition of La Mer. And that is just the creme de la creme of skincare at the time. It was developed by doctors and really just kind of gave this ultimate kind of luxury and prestige to the brand.
And to top off the 90s, in 1999, they purchased Jo Malone, the perfume company. And I think this is so wild. You know what the purchase price of Jo Malone was?
Tell me.
It was $15 million. That seems like a freaking steal.
I mean, I know that Jo Malone is one of their best performing brands to this day. But I love that brand so much. I listened to the How I Built This podcast about the company, and she started in her kitchen as well.
That's so cool.
I know. So it's amazing. And I'm sure she's made way more than that $50 million, by the way. But yes, another definite success for Estee Lauder.
Yeah, good investment.
So not only were we seeing like product innovations, taking the company public, all of these acquisitions, like Leonard was truly responsible for so much growth for the company. It's almost unbelievable what he was able to accomplish under his leadership. But after he kind of like locked in their dominance, what happened with the next generation was a little bit different, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So before we jump into the 2000s and where we're at now, I think we should take a step back and break it down in terms of the family tree. So, at the top, we have Josephine, aka Estee. She's the matriarch here. And she had two sons. So she had Leonard, who obviously was instrumental in building out the business. But she also had another son named Ronald, who has been very involved, but, a little bit less in terms of like the leading
I mean, he wasn't CEO.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then both Leonard and Ronald also have their own respective kids. So Leonard had two sons, William and Gary. William, we'll talk about him soon. He's Gen 3 and, still active in the company. Gary historically was not a part of the business, but he later, in 2023, I think, he had joined the board. He was mostly in like VC for the most part of his career. And then Ronald had two daughters. So he has Jane and Erin. Jane's been at Estee for the greater part of 2 decades. And then there's some drama there, which we'll jump into later. And Erin has also been a part of the Estee company, and she even has her own line that she developed within the company.
Yes, called Erin. So just literally a namesake brand. But just to give you an idea of like how much money being in this family can make you, it's wild. So we just did a little bit of an exercise understanding like what the value of their shares are. So for Leonard, he owns about $10.2 billion of Estee Lauder shares, which is astronomical. And his brother owns about 600 million, which is like literally nothing to shake your head at, but still 10.2 to 6 billion. But when we get to Leonard's sons, Gary, the one that works in VC, who's not really involved, his shares are valued about 7 million. And his brother, William, who is in it still to this day, is valued at 1.1 billion. And then going over to Ronald's daughters, he has Jane, which Sasa mentioned. She's been there for over 2 decades. And I think that has given her a lot of shares in her time there. So that's about $2.8 billion. And Erin, also with the brand, she's valued at 800 million.
Her shares are valued at 800 million, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
crazy.
is wild.
Crazy.
And keep in mind, it's not just the shares that they own, they still get a salary on top of this.
So now let's bring it back to the 2000s. Okay, so in 2004, Leonard's son, William, takes over as CEO. And he was in the C-suite for about 5 years until he stepped down amid some internal tensions with the board. So basically, the board really wanted to bring in a external person who had more CPG, consumer product goods experience, to take the helm. So he was kindly asked to step down. And they brought in Fabrizio Freda, who is a super experienced executive, and he became the first outsider to lead the company as CEO.
The company was not performing as well, and they really needed some help in this space. And I think they were just doing what was in the best intentions of their shareholders at the time. And then so even though Fabrizio Freda did come in, again, the Lauders, they still had, the heart of the company's identity, right? Still being very much a family business. So he was working day to day with other people within the Lauder family at the leadership level. And again, the family, they still have over 80% of the voting power. And this governance really ensured that even though Fabrizio was in there calling the shots, making major decisions, nothing was done without the approval of the greater Lauder family.
So let's bring this back into about the 2020s. So Fabrizio had been CEO for about 16 years, and there was talk about him, eventually stepping down and what that transition plan would look like. And Jane had always expected that she would get some sort of more senior leadership role within Estee.
Exactly. I mean, from Jane's perspective, she had put over 20 years of her life into this company. It was her family's company. And so, putting in 20 years, she definitely had a leadership role. She had moved up the rankings as she worked there. So she thought she kind of had this in the bag. But at the same time, Fabrizio kind of had his own pick for who he wanted to succeed him. And he wasn't an outsider by any means, but he was not a family member of Estee Lauder. His name is Stéphane de la Faverie, and he had actually been at Estee for 13 years, which is nothing to shake your head at in terms of, putting in the work.
Yeah, totally. And, to put this in perspective, the board obviously had to approve this decision. And so it was very clear that the board also wanted to have Stéphane in this CEO suite role. I remembered reading in 2022, 2023, when there was talk about all this, about who might take over from Fabrizio. Jane was a name. She was a contender, right, in that lineup.
Absolutely. But, when she got passed over, she was pissed, to say the least. She was writing scathing letters, just really talking about how unhappy she was and how frustrated she was with this decision. Because I don't know how blindsided she was. We weren't in the decision-making room when this was happening, or how much she knew or didn't know. But, from what we understand, she truly believed that she deserved that role.
Yeah. And, she also happens to be a Lauder. So she was overlooked for the CEO position, but the board did offer her a vice chair role. But she said no to that because she thought it lacked the same level of power as her cousin William, who was actually the chairman of the board. And things got escalated real quick.
To say the least.
To say the least. When Jane started sending additional letters to the board, trying to convince people to push to remove William from his chair seat. And that's when things got spicy.
Really, really spicy. So she didn't get the CEO role, wrote a bunch of letters. They gave her another job offer, and she still wasn't happy. So she wrote a bunch more letters. And I guess all these letters kind of fell on deaf ears, because in 2024, October, she resigned. And that was a huge deal, just kind of really just shocking everybody. I think the board was probably thinking, you're getting an executive level leadership role. We are paying you very, very handsomely. So they were just absolutely stunned that she just straight up left the company.
You know what? I honestly, this is my hot take. I think when you are in that high of a leadership role and you are bringing such strong emotions to the workplace, it looks very unprofessional. And you're not only bringing strong emotions, and I get it, we're human, right? But you're kind of bringing in dirty laundry of family drama. And I just don't think that's professional.
I get it. I really do. But what else can she do in this scenario to really kind of voice her own opinion? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, right?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Because, as someone who grew up in the family who really, really wants this, and kind of, I guess for her, it was either this or nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting though, because I feel like I wish I could read that letter, because I would love to know what points she was trying to make to convince the board members to remove William. She would need to have very, very strong evidence that he's not he's doing something in poor interests of the board or for the company to try to get him off the board, you know?
That one to me. So the first letter kind of made sense, right?
Yeah,
Like first letter is kind of saying, I wish I was a CEO, you made a mistake. But the second letter just seems a little bit vindictive in some ways.
It feels vindictive. I still think that first letter, like if it's like sore loser syndrome, right? If you don't win, why are you complaining? Like I think this is what I think. Like if you don't get the role that you expected, you nod your head, you say, okay, you shake the hand of the opponent and you're like, it's a game. This is just how it played out. This is how the cards are laid out. Like, I don't know. It feels almost whiny to me to do that.
To write so many letters.
To the board. Yeah. I would never, ever. And I've sat on boards. Like I just can imagine if I were to write a letter like that, I would be like, this looks so bad.
The thing is, I'm sure she probably had many, many opportunities to voice her opinion in person with these people. So not the fact that she, wrote the letters, but also like who's talking about her writing all these letters? How are they getting all this information to kind of share? Because it does not look good on her.
Yeah, I know. But again, I also have a lot of empathy for her because I can't imagine being where she is. Like you said, family business. She's put so many years into
like half her life.
Yeah. This is like my unsolicited advice for careers, right? Like just career talk. I don't know. I wouldn't want to drag so much emotion into it because I feel that it can be very unprofessional.
Sure. I don't know. For me, I always got the advice to like never leave a paper trail. So it's like literally things like letters do leave an indelible mark. But when I think about this story, it just reminds me of like Succession, my favorite show.
I love Succession.
I know. I don't know why, but like it's like not that I'm trying to like assign like the character of like Shiv or whoever to like all the different family members, but when they were like thinking about bringing in the outside CEO and end up with Tom, all these things.
Yeah.
By the way, I knew Tom was going to be the CEO from like the first season.
Oh yeah.
He gave off. I just knew he was going to be it. Ask anybody. I called that day one.
Good for you. Good shot to call.
I should have gone to Vegas and placed bets.
Yeah.
That kind of wraps up all of like the family drama that they were dealing with, but they had so many other problems, like financial problems that the company was trying to wrestle with at the same time. And I think they kind of like layered together, right? Like probably the reason why there was so much contention for who would take over is because they had so many problems that they had to solve.
Yeah. And to put this into context, Estee Lauder's stock price, their shares, have dropped to a 12-year low in 2024. And what that means is, shares have lost about 50% of their value, really resulting in a $25 billion decrease in market value. That's pretty wild.
That is absolutely insane, especially because the beauty industry as a whole has been exploding these years and just seeing so much growth overall.
Yeah, I think so. To factor into these numbers, they did well during COVID. If you look at their earnings reports, it's really kind of like that transition from once we were kind of getting out of COVID into now, and their earnings have just not been good. I've spoken to insiders at Estee Lauder. They've gone through multiple rounds of layoffs. I know last year in 2024, I think there were 2 rounds of layoffs. And then even this year in January, I heard mid-January, they did another round of layoffs. And they are calling this part of their profit recovery and growth plan, or PRGP internally. It's really tied to a couple of the reasons why like their stock has not been performing so poorly.
I mean, the easiest way to save money as a company is just to fire a bunch of people.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But the morale there, wow, it must have really taken a hit.
Yeah, totally. And, one of the main reasons why they've been performing so poorly has been their poor performance in China.
And so when it comes to China, I know that it was Fabrizio that really made major investments in China, really thinking that it's going to be like their huge kind of go-to global market expansion. But overall, the demand from the Chinese markets has been, pretty low, leading to really just issues with excess in inventory and really kind of significant infrastructure issues. And I think all of these missteps, what they really have led to is just like a major disconnect between what the company thinks is going to be good, what's a worthwhile investment versus what the market actually needs. And so I think that it's kind of those big bets and big losses that can put you in a lot of trouble here.
So the overinvestment in China was one major factor, right? But they've also been struggling with just trends in digital marketing in general, especially for the Estee brand itself. I think one of the things that they've struggled to do is just resonate with like the Gen Z, Gen Alpha TikTok generation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I feel like so much of like Estee Lauder, for me, it's literally like my grandmother's brand of choice. And Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, anti-aging skincare is still like definitely in and super, super high in demand for today. But maybe, we could kind of make some guesses at things that they totally missed out on. Like, I think one thing that they're great at is being like a science forward brand that's actually like pretty clean. And I don't think they really mention that too much in their messaging.
Yeah, they totally were late to capitalize on the clean beauty trend. I think now clean beauty is kind of like an inherent part of all beauty, right? Because the consumer doesn't want to see X ingredients in
Oh,
their
for
product.
sure. Consumers are so smart these days. Like,
Yeah.
if you say that you use like added fragrance or sulfates, phthalates, whatever, like, they definitely know better nowadays. But it's a great thing to say, like, hey, we don't do this.
Right. And Estee Lauder was just late to capitalize on that trend. And the other thing is that a lot of their portfolio brands have just not been launching a lot of new product.
I've noticed that. So it's not just Estee Lauder itself not launching new products, but, whether it's like Smashbox or, Too Faced or kind of these other brands within the brand, you're really just not seeing as much activity as some of these other companies. So, like, for example, when I think of last year, 2024, I feel like everybody was on top of it when it came to like a lip peptide treatment, right? But I don't think I saw any from any of Estee's portfolio companies. Maybe The Ordinary, I think they came out with one, but not the other makeup companies.
Yeah, they were really struggling to reach like a younger audience. And so Estee was making these target acquisitions like with Too Faced and with Dr. Jart, but they kind of just landed flat and they haven't been working for them.
It's so funny that you say that because there's actually this thing that is just kind of like whispers in the beauty realm, but it's called the curse of Estee Lauder. So, as we know, Estee has acquired over 25 companies in their portfolio, but some of these just really do not hit the mark. Like, these brands just get acquired and then fail or fizzle out entirely. So some of the biggest flops that I think about, first and foremost, is Becca Cosmetics. Do you remember them?
Oh my God, I forgot about them.
Right. So they were an Estee brand.
Wow.
Yes. And so they were acquired because, they were just killing it in the makeup game. It was really when like 2016, like Instagram makeup was really popular and their highlighters were absolutely iconic. But sales declined and they started to shutter the brand overall. But what they actually did, and they've done this multiple times in their history, but they took their most popular products from Becca and actually allowed another one of their portfolio companies, Smashbox, to start selling them. So they started selling Becca's highlighters as well as their under eye kind of brightening concealer products. But they ended up doing that because they kind of shuttered every other product that Becca made and just wanted to keep, like, ideally, like their two hero products alive. But even that being said, with Smashbox, Smashbox itself is also not doing as great. They actually stopped selling in the UK really recently.
Interesting. So did they rebrand them as Smashbox products?
No, so they said Smashbox or Becca by Smashbox was the branding on it. So people still knew that it was the Becca product that they knew and that they loved. And they kept the packaging, I think, identical, if not very, very similar, just so the consumer had something recognizable, that they could have in their makeup bags. But other companies they saw fail were products like Glam Glow. These guys were huge. I had a bunch of their masks. Did you ever try them?
No, I never tried them.
Okay, but you remember the packaging,
do remember,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one unfortunately also shuttered. And one that made me really sad was the Rodin Oleoluso.
Oh yeah.
So that was kind of like an cool girl brand back in the day. But, Estee, they did bring out the defibrillators and tried to resuscitate as best they could. They did a couple of collabs with Joe Malone. But unfortunately, that wasn't enough to save it either.
And then there were other brands that have gone completely dead to the curb. Brands like Prescriptives, Ojon? Who's Ojon? We don't know, but it's gone. And then Flirt Makeup, Dunzo.
Wow. And I mean, but when you think about it, and when a company like Estee Lauder, think about them as, let's say, a VC firm, right? Where they are buying and acquiring companies, and whether they're small investments, big investments, they're not all going to be successes forever, right? So I guess it's kind of understandable that some of them just fizzle away, but it's, yeah,
you can't have 100% hit rate. So it makes sense, right? But also, I don't know. If we're looking at batting average, is this good or bad?
If it's out of 25.
Yeah.
But it really is amazing how much they try when it comes to these acquisitions, because they are putting some crazy dollars behind it. In 2023, I believe, is when they finalized their acquisition of Tom Ford Beauty, and that went for over like $2.3 billion.
Damn.
I know.
You know, and it's interesting with Tom Ford, I think they went into a partnership deal with them early on, like in 2004 to license for perfume and some other products, right?
Yes, because they were really on it when it came to perfume. Because not only was it like all the iconic Tom Ford fragrances, I mean, Aaron's a fragrance company, Estee Lauder has their own fragrances. They have the Frederic Mall, they have Killian. So many amazing fragrances are, Estee Lauder brands.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, almost all my favorites are there. Also, sidebar, did you know that Tom Ford went to Parsons?
No, but I love that.
Yeah.
I do know that he is like, does he live in New Mexico?
I have no idea.
I think he lives in New Mexico or Albuquerque's in New Mexico, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think he has like some gorgeous, like stunning estate out there that I saw on like Arc Digest.
Oh, I love that. Good for him.
Yeah, it's New Mexico, $75 million ranch.
Oh, damn, good for him. Rich daddy. Okay. And another really big one that they did was Deciem, which owns The Ordinary and Noid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they went into a minority investment stake into Deciem in 2017, and then they did a full-on acquisition in 2024 for $1.7 billion.
That is absolutely insane. But I mean, I get it. Like when you think about the investments that they make, it makes sense, right? Like, Tom Ford kind of had this extreme luxury, and then Deciem, Ordinary, Noid, kind of all those brands, I guess, really on the other end, super affordable, accessible, right?
Mm-hmm. High low.
And it's so funny. Like, I don't think a lot of people know about Noid, but it is Gautam's favorite skincare brand, or
is
one
it
of
really?
them. Yeah.
Wait, that's so cute.
I know he really likes his products.
Wow. That's so funny because Andrew uses The Ordinary's buffet serum. I know they call it something else now. It's like a multi-peptide serum, but he uses it every night.
So they must be like really good at marketing to men or getting like the male audience, right?
You know what I think it is like their branding is very simple.
It's got to be their single ingredient, formulations for the most part. But I don't know. Do you use The Ordinary?
I used to.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was great because it was a very affordable line. So people, obviously, it's like good for a broke ass student, like when I was back in school and stuff. But I don't use their products as much anymore, but I still think it's a good option.
I love the price point. I think it's great. But for me, the products have just never agreed with my skin. And I know I do lean a little bit more on the sensitive side, but there should be things that like basic things like hyaluronic acid, right? That I should be able to use without breaking out.
Oh, you use one of their hyaluronic acid?
I've tried a lot of their products because back in the day when I was first getting very into skincare, I didn't have a lot of money. So I really did look to The Ordinary, and I would kind of look up, okay, these are my skin concerns. These are the ingredients that I should be looking at. Let me just start cherry picking which ones I think would make the biggest difference on my skin. So I remember purchasing their hyaluronic serum, their niacinamide, their glycolic toner, and they had this kind of like peel. I think it was like a lactic acid peel, the pink one.
Yep.
And so I was like trying all these different things, and maybe I was doing too much at once. I don't think so, but my skin just really didn't like the products.
You know what's interesting? I've spoken to cosmetic chemists about this, and one of their biggest thorns in their foot is The Ordinary, because it's essentially taught, or it's essentially trained lay people to act as if they know what they're doing and put a bunch of different things on their faces and have these really poor reactions.
After working in skincare and really understanding what goes into making a formula, I am not the biggest proponent of single ingredient formulations anymore, because it's not just, the ingredient that makes a difference, but it's how it's getting delivered into your skin, how it's working, and other ingredients can be added to really just kind of create, whether it's like a more cushiony impact or kind of like a more protective seal on your skin. Like all of these other ingredients really do work to have the overall experience be better for the consumer. So I'm just not the biggest fan of single ingredient solutions.
That's fair. I totally get that. So we've talked a lot about, the origins of Estee Lauder, and we've brought it back to present day with Stefan as the new CEO. But it leaves me asking the question of, where is Estee Lauder headed?
Estee, they're really doing a lot when it comes to research and development and also innovation because even though they sell a lot of products, they are at the forefront of innovation. They have over, I think, about 44 patents, maybe more, maybe a little bit less. But, I think it really just kind of underscores the commitment that they have to skincare innovation.
And because they're such a large conglomerate, they're able to invest so heavily into research and development, right?
Yeah, they're really throwing some crazy money behind it. In 2024, they opened the Skin Longevity Institute in China, and I think they just opened a new branch in Belgium.
Yeah, they have. And this is their longer term trend towards skin longevity products and research, right? And I think that aligns really well with the overall beauty industry because I think there's a lot of emphasis right now in terms of just longevity, even outside of beauty, in the health markets too.
Wellness for sure, right? Like with all of the supplements, like NAD drips and all of these things kind of going on, they really want to be more progressive. And who knows what's going to happen with all of that research and what products it's going to end up into. Like, are they going to give those, like, let's say they develop a new molecule or a new ingredient? Is that going to go into La Mer? Is that going to go into the ordinary? Like, who knows? Is that going to go into Estee? Like, who knows where it's actually going to end up? But I really think that it's going to be super, super innovative.
They've also even launched an incubator program. So
That's
they have,
right.
yeah, Innovation Ventures. It's a global program. And so they're really trying to source talent to home grow that next big hit.
I think the beauty industry is definitely going to keep growing. And if they have, like, I know we've been saying that they've had their ups and downs, but they still make so much money and they have enough money to invest in all of these small businesses and creators. And I think that they're doing a good job because kind of like what we talk about with where they're missing when it comes to marketing or kind of that target audience, like this is how they're going to be able to fill those gaps essentially, right?
It's one of their strategies, and I hope it works for them.
I do too.
So, Julia, do you use any Estee Lauder products or portfolio company products?
I mean, when I think about Estee Lauder, my first experience with beauty was with Estee Lauder. I know I mentioned my grandma. She was a total beauty queen and she was obsessed with the advanced night repair serum. And what she would do is she would wait until they had their sale every year. And it wasn't so much a sale, but like they would sell like the jumbo size bottles and do a free gift with purchase. And those were like those crazy big ones, remember, at the department store, like Nordstrom's or whatever. And she never would really use the products that they came with because she knew what she liked. And she didn't feel like trying out a new lipstick or a new eyeshadow. So she would just give it all to me. And so all of my first makeup products are Estee Lauder.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know. So it will always have soft space in my heart. But when it comes to like products that I really use, I definitely have a ton of their fragrances.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Tom Ford Beauty. I think that they make some really excellent things. They haven't launched anything new in a while, though.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think like which ones do I use? I have a lot of their fragrance as well. Joe Malone, Frederic Malle. And then in terms of like beauty and skincare, I'm thinking I have some Origins products. I've used Dr. Jart, but none of these things I use religiously.
You know what? I got to take that back. I use a lot of MAC makeup.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do. And it's so funny because like MAC is kind of considered a little kind of old school. I know they tried to have these great campaigns with their new like Synchro skin serums and like all of their new products. And I have tried some of them and they're awesome. Like their new Radiance like foundation is amazing and I use it. It's like a heavy duty foundation. So it's like my going out foundation, but I do use those regularly still.
Okay, cool. Speaking of MAC, I feel like they're the one portfolio brand that I have seen them try to push more influencer collabs.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
So I think what they did last year is like they found a bunch of influencers and had them all create their own lip kits, kind of like the Kylie lip kits.
Cute.
So they would choose one of their liners and then one of their lip glosses or whatever. And it would be like the Gabrielle kit, for example.
Oh, yes. I remember that. Yep.
And I think another thing that they're doing is they made so many people angry recently because they would reformulate or kind of change the colors or discontinue some of their iconic shades. And these are things that have been on the market for like 20 years. So people would love them. So people would either panic buy like 10 lipsticks.
Yeah.
And then, but I hear that they're actually going in and bringing back a lot of like their original shades back to like where they originally were.
Okay.
I know that's a bit confusing, but basically there was like a shade called Stone and they took it off and they brought it back. But everyone was saying like, oh, it's different. It's more warm than it used to be. So now they're going back again.
They
and
reverted it all.
Exactly. So they're doing it right this time.
Got it. I mean, I've been gifted like a La Mer cream before. And so like, I remember you going through that whole bottle and it's lovely, but it's not something I would spend my own money to go and buy.
Like, to be honest, hot take, I think La Mer is crap. Like, it's not crap, like it's good, but like for the money that you pay for it, you're really not getting anything special.
The way I like to think of La Mer is more like when you're buying perfume. It's more of an experience. And I will say, I think the packaging is so stunning. It is by far one of my favorite branded or just brands for skincare.
The white
colors,
jar?
Yeah, I love it. I love the color palette. It's definitely more of a prestige older audience and they know exactly who their audience is. You should go to a store recently and just look at some of their products. Like they have a serum and the bottle is really stunning.
I've seen the serum and their eye product is really gorgeous, but like that white jar to me looks like Mario Badescu. Like
I think he was copying them though, the other way around.
He definitely was. But like, I don't know, for me, it just reminds me of that. And it was like, that's not as impressive. But I do have their tinted foundation and it's really, really nice. I can't lie. But you know, it's just really expensive for like a tinted moisturizer. I think it's like $95.
Yeah, but you know, that's part of the charm.
Yeah, I do love it though. And I do feel super bougie when I use it. But I think for me, it's not so much the other it's the cream that gets me. Like their iconic cream just does not impress me much.
I think at the time when it was released, it was a very innovative product. I think now using sort of like, I think it's like high in like lanolins and stuff like that. That's not really a thing anymore. That was more of like the Olay cold cream era.
Oh, for sure. I think that's part of it. But I just know that for, you know, the $300 or however much you're spending on that cream, like you can get so much more. But also for me, if I'm spending money on skincare, it's going into serums. It's not going into creams.
That's fair. All right. So that was a deep dive into Estee Lauder, one of the biggest beauty conglomerates out there.
I know. We got super nerdy with you guys this episode.
I love it. I love it.
Like we're talking about history, financial performance, acquisitions. But I think that's the finance girl in you, Sasa.
I know. It's just so much fun.
It honestly really is because it just really reminds us that beauty is so much more than like, you know, like the vapid whatever conversations about, you know, cold creams and highlighters, right?
Yeah. It's more than skin deep, Julia.
It's more than skin deep. Hello.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in with us today. We had such a good time and stay tuned for next week's episode.
And don't forget to hit that follow and subscribe button. Be sure to leave us some love in the reviews and share this with a friend who might need a glow up.
And please, let's be friends. We would love if you could give us a follow on Instagram. We are at GlowJob Podcast. And you can follow Miss Sasa at Sasa No Skin or myself, Julia, at SkinSift.
Thanks so much, guys. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.